up the rational direction, I left him and let him do his own thing. So from 1964 on, I applied the principles of dialectic as a mode of psychotherapy. Mode means that it isn't psychotherapy, it is something like it. When I was in New York, I decided to get another doctorate in psychology, which I went to the New School of Social Research for several years. And during that time, I was a motivation researcher with Albert Ellis's Institute for Motivation Research and Motivation Dynamics in New York City for several years. And I saw that there was a real crisis in psychology then, and I thought it might be better for me to continue what I am, which is a philosopher, rather than change my perspective and try to become a psychotherapist, because I was faced with the problem, a real curious problem, is that I saw the only place where you could really do dialogues might be in psychotherapy, where it's meaningful, where people are willing to consider what they think in a very serious, personal way, so I was attracted to that field. But I saw that the kind of thought I was involved in at the New School of Social Research in New York reached a certain crisis point, and I separated myself from them over a motivation study that was done at the University of Minnesota. They have a great number of studies called the Symposium Studies from Minnesota, and there was one that we focused on, and I parted on that study, since everyone at the school was defending it as an excellent example of motivation studies and the application of technology at that time in the 1960s to human behavior. What it was, I'd like to share with you, is that in this study there were a group of volunteer paratroopers that were wired in every possible way at the time, so that therefore people could get a measure of whether or not their levels of anxiety increased as they approached their first jump from a plane. And so the plane went up and they jumped, of course. Well, they were all wired and they had all this kind of data. And it was really remarkable because the data was very much, of course, they were involved with, at the time, with Dollard and Miller, if you're familiar with those two thinkers. They wrote a work. And the basic point is that as you approach a goal, right, you have to face certain levels of anxiety. And they thought that the approach gradient of any kind of human behavior has to therefore face the fact that levels of anxiety increase, and at some point, therefore, they're going to cross. They're going to cross at some junction. Well, all of the galvanic skin response measures and all the kinds of equipment that they had measuring these volunteers, they found, therefore, that all of the scales for avoidance, to get away, fear, get away, occurred as they were stepping up into the plane. And I said, gentlemen, it's all over. I mean, you have the wrong model, because according to your measures, at that point, they should run away. They should flee. They should avoid. That's avoidance gradient, soared. And they said, no, 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 no. And I said, yes, 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 yes. And they said, well, take a look at all the scores when they jump out of the plane. I said, it doesn't make any difference. What all the, all the kinds of factors may come in later. The point of the matter is the greatest scores occurred as they made the ascent into the plane. So I said, oh, this is ridiculous. They're trying to save their system, and I have enough trouble understanding philosophy that I don't have to get into a system that's trying to save itself, which is bogus arguments. So that's when I left. So I thought, therefore, I was doing some motivation studies for Johnson & Johnson and Ford Motor Company and things of that nature. And I got fed up with that kind of application of the mind to those kinds of studies. And I thought, best thing for me to do would be to find a place to do some philosophy and explore my own idea of philosophy and dialectic. So I said to myself, the first place that offers me a job, I'm going to camp there, and that's where I'm going to do my work. Well, I got a job in Southern California, if you're familiar with that area. in Costa Mesa at the Orange Coast College. They gave me a job teaching philosophy. I said, fine. And that was in 64. Was it 64? Yeah, 64. Well, I was doing what I thought was exceptionally well until one of the faculty members came up and said, Pierre, we like you here, but the word is out, you're causing too much trouble. There's a new school opening up and no one knows you there. Maybe you should sneak over there and get a job. And I said, fine, so I moved to Golden West College. And I found out that that was the most ideal circumstance I could find, and I have absolute proof of this, and I think everyone will agree with you once you hear my argument. Ready? Here it is. Best job of all. It was a new college. They only had one philosopher. I was it. For 10 years, therefore, I could have my own courses, design my own courses. They gave me complete freedom in terms of what books to use, what books not to use. Therefore, I figured this was safe for a good number of years. It turned out for about 10 years. So I was exploring philosophy, and a group of people came around, students came around, and so we had a society, kind of informal society. And then the school around 68 came up and said, for a variety of reasons, wouldn't it be better if you didn't have your philosophy group on the campus? And I said, fine. So we moved off the campus and formed another group called the Noetic Society, where we explored dialectic. That was formerly a group to explore dialectic. And wisdom traditions. That was our goal. Well, I was exploring this mode of psychotherapy, which is really applying Platonic dialectic to exploring human problems, improvising and using Plato and Plotinus. And it reached a point where the people in this group said, look here, you have to teach us what you're doing. And a young lady at the time urged me to do so. And I said, okay. So we incorporated the Noetic Society in order to legally protect the members exploring this particular crazy mode of philosophical counseling, at that time called philosophical midwifery, because of Plato's term philosophical midwifery. He saw himself, of course, as a midwife akin to his mother's, only she treated women who were pregnant, he treated men who were pregnant with ideas, but he said the same principles apply to both. So then, the Noetic Society, therefore, was incorporated in December of 1978, and before this, I gave several talks about philosophy and psychotherapy and Buddhism. One I just happened to be looking at the other day, a major one I did in 1978. No, 1972. Could be 71. Alan Watts asked me to give a talk on the kind of psychotherapy that I was doing with Platonism and Madhyamaka Buddhism, and I said fine. And so I gave a fun talk, a workshop at his houseboat in the SS Vallejo in Sausalito, and that was in 72.
What was that word you just used before?
Madhyamaka.
Madhyamaka?
Yeah, that's a school of Buddhism. The reason why that's so significant is that's the primary school that uses a dialectic, Madhyamaka Buddhism. Yeah. I can even spell it. Oh, yeah. Madhyamaka. Okay, Madhyamaka Buddhism. Look it up. It's a nice. There's a very important book by Murti, M-U-R-T-I, and if you're interested in looking it up, he did a very nice comparative study of dialectic, both Buddhism and in the West. Very fine scholar, and a very interesting, insightful Buddhist. So I recommend it too. Murti.